My name is Jackie Schertz, and welcome to Hey Listen. Tonight's topic is the new New York State relay system that was recently established on January 1st, and it's been running for all of 3 weeks now. And so we'd like to chat with some of the people who were involved in setting this service up and ask them, how is everything going, and also share our opinions on what we think about the service. We have Paul Talor with us and Cheryl Graham. So stay with us, and we'll be right back. Welcome to Hey Listen. Today's topic is the new New York Relay Service. We're very honored to have our two guests with us today. First on my left is Paul Talor, who was one of the first people who really rolled up his sleeves and got involved in establishing this relay service. Paul is an associate professor in the data processing department of the National Technical Institute for the Deaf at RIT. And next to him we have Cheryl Graham, who is the manager of the New York Relay Service. And next to her we have Martha Shippee, who will be sign interpreting for Cheryl. Obviously, the first question, well, hold on, let me back up a moment. Paul was really involved with this New York Relay Service, and first of all, I'd like to congratulate Paul and thank him for really going ahead and helping this project get moving. Also, I'd like to thank Alan Hurwitz, who is sitting in the audience with us, and I'm hoping we can see Alan. He was involved in a great deal too. Also, Patty Lego was very active in this effort. And there were a lot of people earlier who thought of the idea and just didn't have the appropriate contacts or weren't certain how to set up this type of thing. But now we have it, and the first question I'd like to start with is, what led to the service being developed?
Okay, I remember about 4 years ago, my wife and I had just come back from England. We'd been there in England for a year teaching at a school for the deaf. And as we came back, we started to use the phone for a few different things and became more and more frustrated with the relay service. I mean, the Highline relay service was often busy, or it was difficult to get through. In my department, I don't have a secretary assigned who could make phone calls for me all day long. And I think in some ways I was spoiled. Previously, I'd worked for another department in a different capacity where I did have a secretary reporting to me. So that was an option for making phone calls. And when I found I couldn't make phone calls as easily, it became really frustrating. At the same time, I'd heard that in California, they were preparing to set up a TTY relay service. So I thought, why wouldn't we be able to do the same thing here in New York State? And as I read through the phone book, I was trying to find perhaps some small opening where perhaps we could work on something like this and find a way to really simplify services for people here. And I was reading in the phone book where they had the tariffs. The tariff said that the phone company had an obligation to serve all people. Well, all would certainly include us. So I got together with Patty Lago and Alan Hurwitz, and the three of us started to deliberate what we might be able to do. So I thought, well, maybe I could write a letter to the PSC, the Public Service Commission in Albany, and see if perhaps they could help us in some way. So I sent off a letter and initially didn't receive a response. After a while, they wrote back and they said, oh, sure. They said they'd be eager to help in the effort. And they asked that the three of us travel out to Albany and meet with them. So we drove out to Albany and started discussions with the PSC people. Explained our difficult position and how we were unable to get through to the existing relay service to make phone calls and a variety of the frustrations and concerns we had. Let me go back just a little bit. The people at the PSC did have some information about deaf people who'd had difficulty using the telephone. Some information from back in 1984. Dr. Francis Burko, who's from the Office of the Advocate for the Disabled, had been doing some work and research in that area about 1982 or 83. I don't remember exactly which year. And she'd been doing some writing and trying to educate people. And I think the PSC really hadn't heard enough directly from deaf people at that point. At any rate, the PSC was willing to intervene, and they really wanted to hear from more and more people, like the folks here in our audience. And an effort was made to inform them and have some letter writing campaigns. They set up some public hearings, and that's really what led to the service being established.
Okay, when you speak about PSC, many people don't know what this is. It's the Public Service Commission. And I just wanted to make sure that our audience knew that. So at that time, what was the involvement of the PSC?
Okay, the PSC is a regulatory agency for a variety of utilities, electrical companies, the water company, gas company. And you know there's only one electric company in Rochester. There's only one gas company in Buffalo. And they have all the business to themselves. There's no competition. They really enjoy a monopoly, if you will. And, you know, you need some sort of regulatory agency so that they don't raise the rates sky high. So they're allowed to make a reasonable profit, but they're not allowed to take advantage of people. So the PSC, the Public Service Commission in Albany, is the regulatory agency that takes care of utilities. And they also have a responsibility to make sure that telephone service is fairly delivered to all people in the state. So that agency was really in the natural position to be able to write some regulations related to the difficulties we were experiencing related to telephone usage. And they'd heard initially about some of the problems in the past from Dr. Burko.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering why the telephone company itself did all of this work for the relay, and why didn't a different agency take care of that? I'd like to hear from Cheryl, please.
Well, primarily, when the order was issued from the PSC, the fact of the matter was that the 41 local exchange companies had the responsibility of providing the service. However, AT&T was the party who came forth and said that we would be happy to provide the telephone service. The reason primarily being that, number one, we are the experts in telephony. We have all of the expertise to put together an operation that can mobilize the people and the equipment and all of the things that are needed to provide the service, as well as the administrative expertise in providing the service. We have had teams of operators working in other areas for many, many years and know how to provide that administrative service, as well as the training and methodology that is necessary to provide a high-quality service to the consumer. That's primarily the reason that the telephone company, or AT&T in this case, is providing the service as opposed to a social service agency in New York State.
I see. Why do we have one state, centralized state agency? Why don't we have different local agencies split around in a variety of places?
I remember during the PSC meetings, actually there were a series of monthly meetings, we discussed a variety of possibilities, and we found that it would be most cost-effective to have it centralized under one roof with centralized management and trying to keep the overhead costs as low as possible. Having it in one area meant that there'd be many long-distance calls to get through to the service, but the overhead savings would more than offset the cost of calling in long distance. So it was just cost effective. It was an economic reason that led to having it centralized.
I remember one of the few good deeds that President Reagan did was signed a bill entitled the Telecommunications Enhancement Act of 1988. And I'm wondering what specifically is in that bill that relates to the relay, and could you please clear that up for us, how that relates to national compared to state levels?
Okay, that act really focuses on three things. First of all, it establishes a federal relay service to allow all of the federal employees who need to use the telephone for work, and to allow the public, deaf citizens, to call government representatives for any types of services or information. So that's one primary part of this act. Secondly, is for the government to provide some money related to TDD research for telecommunications, not total communications, but telecommunications, more practical, less expensive, and easier to access. So it provides for funding for research in that area. A third part of the bill, and probably in my opinion the most important of the three, is it directs the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission.
The FCC?
Yes, the Federal Communications Commission.
Thank you.
To initiate a study that will allow all relay services to provide service across state lines and to carry interstate telephone calls. I'm sure a lot of people don't understand why the New York State relay service, or perhaps the California relay system, can't cross state lines right now. And I'm sure Cheryl can probably explain that better. But you know that when you call out on a long distance call, suppose Rochester, or if you're calling from here, Rochester Telephone Company makes some money, not the telephone company where you're calling to. For example, if you want to call one of your friends in Illinois, suppose in the Chicago area, you go ahead, make the call. Rochester Telephone Company, if they're providing the service, will make some money from that long-distance call. They're a long-distance carrier, like AT&T or MCI, Sprint. They make some money from the long-distance call. But the person at the destination where you're calling in Chicago, the phone company out in Chicago makes nothing from that at all, out in Illinois. Now, if there's a relay service, one of the problems is that the New York people are paying for the relay service for other telephone companies in other locations. And when the PSC looks at that, it appears to be unfair to the people in New York State, because we've got to pay the bills for that. And part of that bill pays for service that's handled through other companies that aren't here within New York State. And that's a problem. That's problematic. California faces the same problem. So the FCC is focusing on how to resolve those difficulties. And after that, I'm sure that relay services will be able to handle calls to and from all states. That'll be great.
Thank you very much. We need to take a break now for a message from our sponsor, but we really have some interesting things ahead, like we will make an honest-to-goodness relay call right here on the air. And so we'll see how it works. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. We're here talking about the New York relay system. And right now we're going to make a relay call on the air. And I'm going to call Marge Baker, who is with Consumer Affairs at the Public Service Commission. So stay with us and we'll see how this goes. Okay, it's easy to remember the number of the relay service. It's a 1-800 number. And I see a flasher. It means the operator's picked up now. Yes, indeed. Oh, okay. Yep, I'm on hold right now. The relay service received my call, and they're proceeding to call the number that I want to contact. Okay, now the operator is calling a hearing person who does not have a TTY at their home. Okay. Okay, this is what the operator said. Thank you. I'm calling them now. So when I call the relay center, the operator will contact a hearing person. Okay, now they're letting me know that the phone is ringing. Okay. And I see here it says, hello, this is Marge. And that's the person that I wanted to call. Well, I told her to smile because she was on candid camera. She's saying, I am delighted to hear from you. And I am happy to see this service is a reality. It's just so exciting. It is hard to put into words. I thanked her for the wonderful service that she's provided so far. Marge is with the PSC, and so she's telling me that she appreciates our thanks, and it's been a lot of hard work that has gone into this project in establishing the service. By a lot of people. And it certainly was not a one-man show. She says, thank you, bye, and thank you very much for calling. Oh, thank you, bye, and SK. So, that went great. And during the process, I didn't even feel as if there were a third party there. That was very comfortable. I thought I was talking directly to the person, and I'll tell you, I really enjoyed using this service. And so I would like to ask for a comment from Alan Hurwitz, who's with us in the audience. Okay. Cheryl? When I called the relay service, the person who answers the phone, the operator, really the communications assistant, gives a number. Why do they give a number instead of their name?
Well, we discussed that with the advisory board prior to the implementation of the relay service, and it was a debate about whether they should use their name or whether we should use a number associated with the communication assistance. We decided that a number would be more appropriate for two reasons, really. One, that number would clearly identify that individual as being the person who handled the call, so that if we had people in the center who had the same name, two people who had the same name, if you had a complaint or if you had a compliment to give to that individual, we would be able to identify who that person was. In addition to that, as you mentioned, Jackie, on your call, you felt that you were placing the call. Our job at the center is to be transparent. We do not want to be a third party in the call. It is your call and you are in control of it. And we feel that by using a number, we maintain that transparency more than we would if we used a name. But we're very interested in any feedback that the consumers may have with regard to what they prefer to have used.
Great. I think we have a comment here.
Along with this idea of numbering your operators, perhaps it was just, before it was just a number and that was all, but now I notice that it says communication assistant number. So that helped clarify for us, understand what this number meant. I mean, a lot of times it was just a number and then GA. I mean, what did that mean? We didn't quite understand. So now when it says communication assistant and then the number GA, we get the idea. I mean, it's better than a name, really. So that helped clarify it for us.
That's correct.
Okay, I think we have another question or comment.
I'm sorry, but I can't agree with the other person who added a comment regarding the communication assistant. I think we're already wasting enough time, just trying to get through. And now, the person has to say their name and their communication assistant and all this other nonsense. I mean, I'd like to keep this brief and get to the business at hand. We are calling for you and all this other stuff. I mean, I'm in a hurry. I want to make my phone call. I'd rather this be as brief as possible.
Okay, we need to take a break right now to have a message from our sponsor, but hold on, we'll be right back. We're back again with the New York Relay Service. And we have people in our audience who are ready and eager to ask questions and share their experiences. So I think we have one right here.
I'm very appreciative that the independent life that I have now, that I haven't been able to have really since I was born until I had a service like this. I'm wondering, what is the process that a communication assistant goes through in order to become trained to respond properly? I mean, I'm wondering why there's a time delay for these sorts of things when we have these phone calls. What happens? What is the person doing while there's this delay?
Part of what's happening is that the data is coming in on the screen to the center. We use video display terminals as opposed to the TDDs that you see here today. So that data has to be relayed to us. In addition to that, the communication assistant then uses a voice terminal, a regular outside telephone, to call out to the other hearing party. So that's part of the delay. In addition to that, they are also going through making a billing record of the call so that if the call needs to be billed, that data is already input. So that's part of the delay process.
Okay. And did you have a question before?
I think that this service is great. We're really blessed to have this kind of a service. I'm wondering how long this service might last. I mean, how's the money situation? Is it set up for a year or longer? I'd like to know.
Well, we are funded.
Oh, Cheryl, please take that.
I'm sorry. Our funding is provided through the local exchange companies. Currently, AT&T has a 5-year contract with the 41 local exchange companies in New York State to provide the service. So we know that the service is available for at least 5 years, and it's our hope that we will continue to provide it beyond that. Our objective is to provide high-quality, low-cost service and to maintain that and to provide the service on an ongoing basis.
Okay, related to that, that's another reason that we prefer having the phone company handle this, because an agency may have to be concerned about whether they'll have money to carry on this type of service on an ongoing basis. And so a phone company can make a long-term commitment, like a 5-year contract, and when they do that, we know we're going to be guaranteed to get a contract for quite a long time. Okay, Vicki, please.
I would like to say, first of all, that I appreciate this service greatly. It really has cut down a lot on the work that I've had in terms of trying to make phone calls. Many times in the past, I would delay a phone call or put something off, trying to guess a time when Highline wouldn't be busy or I wouldn't be busy, so I could sit there and dial for a while until I could get into the service. Another thing is, I go to the store and I sign a check. I put down my phone number. And sometimes I think to myself, I wonder what this means when I put down my phone number. Maybe I should add the phone number of the relay service and then my phone number, and then explain to the person how they might be able to call me through the relay service in order to contact me. So I decided to pass on that, and I didn't put that down. I didn't want to take the time and the energy to explain all this out. So instead, I just put down the number of Highline, the local relay service. I wonder what you suggest in that kind of a situation that I might do.
Paul?
Vicki, I've already had my business cards from NTID printed with the relay service number. And then on the next line, I say, ask for my office number. And I'm not going to really worry about that too much. Let the hearing person trying to contact me become confused perhaps, or not know what to do, because I'm sure that the relay center communication assistants will be able to explain a little bit. So I think he or she would say, well, hold on a minute, I need to call that person and contact them, and I expect that maybe for the first year or two, there might be some confusion. But I think within a short time after that, it should all be resolved and things should proceed okay. And I just wouldn't be too concerned about the hearing person out there. Let them become frustrated. I've owned that enough myself for a long time.
Oh, that's great, Paul. I remember earlier you showed us a card that people can give out that explains how this works. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, that's correct. We just received cards that show the New York Relay Service number, and there is a place for you to put your name and your number. And these will be available for anyone that's interested in them. If they just call the Relay Service and ask, we will send you whatever you need. And you can use those to hand out to people as your personal card, and it indicates how to get the Relay Service so that they can call you.
Okay, great, thank you.
For that card is an excellent idea, because I'm pretty tired of explaining to people how to make this whole thing work. But that's a little bit off the point. I'd really like to ask about, my question is about the communications assistants. Do they relay word for word, I mean verbatim what the person says, or do they modify a bit to make sometimes what on the TTY seems like abrupt speech?
For the most part, they will relay word for word as much as they can. If the voice person is speaking too rapidly for them to type that quickly, they sometimes have to tell the voice person to slow down a bit so that they can type the data. However, they do relay as much as possible exactly what is being stated by the person who is speaking to you, and vice versa.
Okay, Cheryl, what happens if a person who's using a language more like ASL is typing on the TDD? Will they be able to translate that to English, and is that what they do, indeed do?
Yes, we have people in the center who have some ASL background who can assist, especially when there are some very difficult situations involving ASL. For the most part, we also train our communication assistants. It's part of their initial training is some ASL background so that they are able to interpret. And that depends on the person who's receiving the call. Some people have indicated a preference for receiving it exactly as the party is stating it, and others, for the most part, we will do the translation.
Oh, I see. Okay. We have a comment over here.
I'd like to know when the state relay was first, I'd like to know when we might have service outside of New York State rather than just within New York State to make phone calls.
Well, I think that question was primarily the one that Paul addressed a little bit earlier. We are technically capable of providing the service and would like very much to provide the service. However, we are not regulated as of now to provide interstate service. So we'll just have to wait until we have that opportunity to serve you.
Okay, back here.
I agree that this new service is excellent. I mean, it's a true godsend for us. I have a question for Paul. Previously, you spoke about not being able to cross state lines. That won't happen until later. And you mentioned that the FCC is looking into this situation. But could you tell us a little bit more about what the FCC plans to do and what we should do to influence the FCC or support the FCC to establish interstate phone calls?
Okay, the bill was passed and signed by the president around November. And that was before the holidays. As you imagine, everyone was quite busy over the holidays. now that the season's over, and I learned as recently as today from the General Services Administration, GSA. You know, those long government words kill me. GSA, the General Services Administration. I was talking with a woman there from GSA today, and she said that the FCC is right now beginning to really look into the matter. They've not really done any work on that issue till now. And if you remember, the bill says that within 9 months of the date that it was signed, which would mean about June or July, they should have a report available. So all I know as of right now is that they're just beginning to really take a look into the issue and what action has been taken, or if they've even appointed an advisory committee. I'm not sure what they've done or plan to do, or even what procedures they might have. I think within 2 or 3 more weeks, we might know a lot more from our contacts in Washington, D.C.
Okay, we have a question here from Sally.
Many of us are already aware of how to use the relay service. Now that more deaf people are aware of it, I'm wondering if you have plans for training deaf people how to use the New York relay service, because it includes the use of toll-free numbers. And many people don't fully understand how to use the area code. Even if we just want to call someone next door, you know, why do we have to put down our area code? It's not being a long-distance phone call, so why would we have to report those area codes? Do you have any plans for training to help people understand this?
Okay, that's a great question, but we need to take a break right now to have a message from our sponsor. And so maybe we can have someone here respond to that question when we come back. So we'll be back in a moment. Okay, we're here again with the New York Relay Service. We just had a question from Sally related to the possible training of deaf people in the use of the relay service. And I'm wondering if you have any comments related to that.
Well, we do have a speakers bureau which has been established through the relay service, and it is composed of people who are with AT&T as well as members from the advisory board and the deaf community and people from the local telephone companies. We are responding to any requests that we have received to go out into the public and speak, whether it be to schools or to special organizations or anyone else who would like our services. So we would be more than happy to assist anyone who has made a request to us for training or any other information with regard to the service. And you can just call the service and ask to speak with the supervisor and make your request known. We'll be glad to assist you.
Okay, Paul?
Yes, I'd like to add to that and talk specifically about the area codes a little bit. Perhaps some of you are wondering why we need to use an area code. For example, Let me give you an imaginary number. 475-2243. Happens to be my number. But in Albany, they have a 475-2243. So if I ask the operator to please dial 475, which exchange am I talking about? A 475 in Albany, a 475 in Buffalo, a 475 in New York City? Those first three-digit exchanges could be duplicated in different cities around the state. So the only way my call can be appropriately routed to Rochester is by letting the communication assistant know that I want area code 716. Then she knows it's coming to Rochester and the exchange here. If I call from 716 to 717, or 716 to another 716 number that's in my local calling area, there's no charge. But if I call from 716 and some Rochester number to 716 that's a Buffalo number, there would be long-distance charges associated. Because Buffalo has, well, the first three numbers would be different. There wouldn't be a 475 in Buffalo, only a 475 here in Rochester, perhaps. And it really, the system works because all of the numbers are in the 716 area code. So the communication assistant really needs to know where the call is coming from, the 716 area code, where it's originating, and also the area code for the destination where the call is going to end up, even if it's still 716, and that allows us to make the calls.
Okay, we have another question.
When I'm making a phone call through the relay service, the hearing person do they know whether it's a male or a female? Well, they know whether it's a male or female communication assistant, but I don't know that. I'm wondering if you maybe could add a letter to the number, so like 1046F or something, or M, and that would indicate a male. And that way I would know if it was a male speaking for a female. Or is that very clear? Did you understand me?
Yeah, so Ray, why would you want to have that information? Why do you need to know that? Whether it's a male or female voicing for you, why do you feel the need to know that?
Well, the hearing person knows whether it's male or female, and I don't.
Okay. Okay, it's fair. All right, great. Okay, I wonder if someone wanted to make an illegal transaction, say, for example, a person wanted to buy cocaine or wanted to use a relay service for some sort of illegal purpose, like in purveying drugs, I'm wondering, will your communications assistants go ahead and do that, even though it's an illegal activity?
Well, we make no judgment with regard to the content of the call, and we do not censor any of the material that goes through the relay service. Therefore, we will relay whatever information is being given to us. It is not up to us to judge the content of that call or in any way to censor it. We do not do that.
Okay. Just suppose later a deaf person gets caught for buying cocaine or being involved in the sale of that, and during the judicial process you're contacted to maybe bear witness, maybe you're subpoenaed to the courtroom. Well, can that possibly happen?
There is a possibility that it could happen. However, because there is no written record of any conversation taking place, and since we handle so many calls every day, it would be impossible for anyone to recall exactly what took place on any specific call. We are also covered with regard to the Telecommunication Act that we must protect the confidentiality of that information. The only information that probably would be or could be subpoenaed would be the billing record, the fact that a call took place. But we would have no way of knowing who in fact placed that call or who was on the other end of that telephone. Therefore, any other information would really be useless.
I see. And Paul, share with me, please, that story that happened to you in Sweden. I remember you told me that before.
Oh, I had a Swedish woman who'd come to stay at my house for several days. And her husband was working for a manufacturing company, a painting company, and he traveled all over Sweden selling paints, and he talked to customers about a whole variety of projects. He had a mobile phone in the car, cellular phone actually, with a TDD, and he used that to make contacts through a relay service with a whole variety of customers and contacts all over Sweden. He was quite a successful big businessman, didn't have a formal education or degrees in business, but did quite well, and he was able to call anyone he had to do business with, other hearing people, whoever. I noticed he had a beautiful car. I'd seen pictures of it, brand new Saab, all kinds of automatic devices, and the lights retracted in the car. I told him, hey, come on. I don't know, maybe you should come to the United States. I'll go over there and get a job working for you. But it's just a nice service.
What a great story.
I'd like to go back to the issue of confidentiality. For example, with 911, the emergency number here in Rochester, they use tapes to monitor all incoming and outgoing phone calls for review if necessary. Is that a practice of your relay service, to tape conversations for review?
No, it is not. We do not tape any conversations at all, and we, as I mentioned before, have no hard copy of any of the conversations that go through the relay service. The only thing that is documented at us all is the billing record. And the confidentiality is strictly protected, and in fact we stress that with communication assistance, and any violation of it could mean the loss of a job of a communication assistant.
Okay, Kathy?
The New York relay service, sometimes their phone system breaks down. I wonder how you might be able to let us know that they're temporarily out of business, be back soon. Maybe you could have some recording that says, sorry, we have an equipment breakdown. Maybe that would be one way to inform us of equipment malfunctions.
We did experience one occasion on which we had a fiber optic cable cut, which affected not only the New York Relay Center, but everything in the Clifton Park area. It was not just the New York Relay Center that was out of service. It was, in fact, the hospitals and the police stations and all of the businesses and residents in the entire area. Because that was the problem, there would have been no way to notify the public unless we went to every switch throughout New York State to let people know that there was a problem. That is the only time that we have lost service as far as the New York Relay Center is concerned, and I would certainly hope that then we don't have a reoccurrence of that. However, no matter how often it has been published that you shouldn't dig or you shouldn't do anything like that with regard to construction until you've notified the telephone company, invariably there are people out there who will.
Okay, Kathy?
I'd like to ask a question about the charges for your service. Do we, New York customers, pay for this, or does the government provide you with some subsidy for a service? I know in California people pay 10 cents per month or something. I'm not sure what the charge is. Is that how ours is worked out, or?
Okay, let me respond to that. As Cheryl explained previously, we have 41 local telephone companies within New York State. Each of those 41 telephone companies pays a portion of the relay service. Just like they pay for telephone poles, they pay for wires, they pay for drivers. It's a normal cost of doing business. Now what happens is, because of that, we don't need to add any sort of surcharge to our phone bills. In fact, we don't want that, because I think it could really put deaf people in a bad light. So it's really a great idea that there is no surcharge printed on the bills. And you're right, that is the system out in California, and that's been a problem out there. As the relay service has been expanding and gets more and more and more demand, you can't increase the surcharge. That's been established by regulations or by law. Here in New York State, as the system expands, we'll be fine. It's a cost of doing business, like needing more telephone poles or more wire or more drivers. Now, each of those 41 telephone companies keeps a profit, a percentage of profits, if you will, and if they want to increase the rates, they have to ask the Public Service Commission if they can, whether it's 10 cents more a month, 15 cents more a month, overall users, but it happens very quietly, and the usage of the telephone relay service isn't tied to that request for a rate increase.
Okay, I have a question about figures here. How many calls are you averaging totally? And how many calls have you already relayed?
We are growing every single day. The first day that we opened up, we had about 748 calls. Now, we are handling in excess of 1,600 calls a day. And every day, we have more calls than we had the day before.
Wow.
We anticipate that we will handle approximately 100,000 calls a month when we are in full operation and as we continue to grow.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. Well, we've come to the end of our time now. I can't believe it ran out so quickly, but thank you. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, Paul, Cheryl, our interpreter, and our whole audience for joining us today. We certainly learned a lot about our relay service. Thank you.